I found my adopted daughter living in her old sedan, pregnant at 20, curled under a thick canvas tarpaulin in an abandoned freight yard. When she finally saw me through the grime-streaked window, her face didn't register relief. It registered pure, paralyzing terror. She shrieked at me, told me to leave immediately, and shouted that I was never her real family anyway. Those were the exact, piercing words my other daughter, Veronica, had quoted to me over the phone just 3 days earlier. The call that claimed the girl I raised had systematically stolen from our family design house and vanished. But something in that desolate moment was profoundly wrong. If she had successfully embezzled all that money, why was she sleeping in a rusted car? Why was she screaming at me with tears freezing on her cheeks? And why did she look more terrified than she looked angry? I knew then that someone was lying to me. The question was not if I would find out, but who and how. I wasn't going to stop until I dragged the entire truth into the light. My name is Eleanor, I am 72 years old, and this is my story. Before we continue, please leave a comment sharing your most valuable life lesson and subscribe to our channel. Now back to the story. I was sipping my morning coffee on the iron balcony of my small stone chateau in Provence when my daughter called to tell me the girl I raised was a thief. The phone vibrated against the wrought iron table. It was a video call. Veronica's name shone brightly on the screen. I tapped the green button. Her face filled the frame. Raw red around the eyes, her usually impeccable blonde hair pulled back messily. She was alone. "Mom!" Her voice cracked like dry wood. I set my delicate porcelain cup down. "What in the world happened, darling?" "It's Anya." She pressed her hand hard against her mouth, pulled it away. "She's been stealing from the company. A colossal amount. We finally caught her." The word hung there, heavy and metallic. Stealing. Marcus found the indisputable proof. Wire transfers. Falsified vendor accounts. She's been doing this for months. Veronica's face twisted into an ugly mask of pain and anger. She left a note. "Mom, she wrote that we were never her real family anyway." My chest seized up instantly. 20 years old. I had raised her since she was 10, the day my best friend, Genevieve, died and made me promise to take her in. The girl who used index cards for every filing cabinet, who always meticulously asked permission before touching even a spare coaster, even after 10 years under our roof. That doesn't sound like her, Veronica. I didn't want to believe it either. Veronica's voice went sharp, hardened by what she perceived as betrayal. "But I knew we couldn't entirely trust her, Mom. You always insisted on seeing the best in her, but I saw this inevitable end coming. I opened my mouth to defend Anya, but nothing came out. Marcus showed me absolutely everything," Veronica continued, tears now flowing freely. "The executive board voted to terminate her immediately. We had no other choice. Marcus Thorne, my son-in-law, the man my husband had personally mentored from a junior analyst, the chief financial officer who ran the entire fiscal side of our custom design house. Where is she now? I don't know. Gone." Veronica leaned closer to the camera, her face tight with forced sympathy. "I'm so sorry, Mom. I know how much you loved her, but she leveraged that. She used all of us." The summer sun was warm on my shoulders. A farmer's tractor drone sounded somewhere across the lavender fields. Everything looked peaceful, but nothing was. "I need time to think," I managed. "Of course. Stay here. Take your time. Marcus and I will handle all the necessary closure back home." The screen went dark. I sat there holding the receiver, staring at the purple rows of flowers below the terrace. My coffee had gone entirely cold. Never her real family. No, that bitter, resentful line had been forced. It triggered a memory inside my head, sharp and immediate. The sterile hospital room had smelled of harsh bleach and cheap flowers. Genevieve was fading. My best friend of 30 years, the woman who knew every quiet regret I ever held. 6 months of treatments had failed. Her face was waxen against the white pillow. Monitors beeped a steady, maddening rhythm. She gripped my wrist. Her frail fingers dug into my skin. "Anya has nobody else, Eleanor. My brother died years ago. No other relatives. They'll put her into the state system." Her voice was barely audible. "She's 10 years old, Eleanor, and she'll disappear into the system." "I know, Genevieve. Promise me. Raise her like she's absolutely yours. My daughter needs you." I had looked at the small girl standing rigidly in the corner, 10 years old, still clutching her school backpack. Her face was the blank canvas children use when they are trying desperately not to comprehend inevitable loss. "I promise you," I said. Genevieve died 3 days later. The girl moved into our mansion the following week. She stood frozen in the doorway of the sunny guest room, holding a worn duffel bag containing her meager clothes, and quietly asked if she was allowed to use the wardrobe. "This is your room now, darling," I told her softly. "You can put your things absolutely wherever you want them to be." She nodded once, set the bag down, and then sat on the very edge of the bed and cried silently. That was Anya. Quiet, meticulous, cautiously grateful to the point of being fragile. 10 years in our family. She called me Mom. She worked in the design house finance department, learning the complexities of global sourcing and logistics. She sent me blueprints of new chair prototypes, asking which materials I liked best. And now Veronica was telling me she'd stolen a fortune and left a note saying we were never her real family. The cup sat on the table. I picked it up and poured the last cold dregs into the ceramic pot beside my chair. Something was drastically wrong. Not wrong with Veronica. She had sounded genuinely distraught. Angry, yes, but also wounded by what she believed was betrayal. But the story itself did not fit the girl I knew. Grand larceny and calculated cruelty were entirely outside that girl's essence. She had spent 10 years trying to earn her place at our table. She would never throw it all away like that unless something had completely shattered her. Unless some intolerable pressure had pushed her to a breaking point I hadn't seen from 3,000 miles away. I thought about why I was even in France in the first place. My husband, Paul, had been terminally ill for nearly 5 years before he finally passed. A relentless neurodegenerative disease had stripped him of everything, month by agonizing month, until he couldn't even manage a glass of water, couldn't walk, and often couldn't recall my face. I had been his sole caregiver through every devastating phase, bathing him, ensuring he was turned in bed to prevent skin breakdown, watching him deteriorate piece by piece. When he finally died, I felt hollowed out and utterly depleted. This chateau, this beautiful sun-drenched French dream, it had been ours. It was something we had planned meticulously for our retirement. We had spent years discussing Sunday mornings, terracotta roofs, endless vineyards, and shared coffee on a balcony overlooking hills that turned liquid gold in the morning light. He never made it. I came anyway because the thought of not fulfilling that promise felt like another final betrayal. But I had also come here because I was exhausted down to my bones. I had confidently handed the entire custom design house over to Veronica and Marcus. I told myself they were fully capable, that they would look out for Anya, that I could finally truly rest. I had effectively left them in command of everything. And now Anya was gone, accused of a theft of $1,200,000. I pushed myself up. The wrought iron chair scraped sharply against the stone floor. Inside the chateau, I walked through the cool, ancient stone hallway to the study where I'd left my laptop resting on an antique mahogany desk. I opened it and typed in a name I hadn't used in 7 years. A private investigative agency. Discreet, notoriously expensive, the kind of firm that asks 0 questions about client motivations. I quickly composed a direct email. Find Anya Peterson. She is 20 years old. Do not, under any circumstances, let Veronica or Marcus Thorne know that I am initiating this search. I hit send immediately. Then I opened a new browser tab and searched for transatlantic flights. The earliest direct route to New York departed the very next morning. I booked it instantly using the specific credit card I maintained strictly separate from all business accounts, the one Veronica and Marcus had absolutely no access to. Done. I shut the laptop and walked back through the house toward the master bedroom. In the heavy wooden armoire, I pulled out the rolling suitcase I hadn't touched since the day I arrived 2 years prior. I packed automatically without thinking. Practical underwear, sturdy cashmere sweaters, the severe black trousers I'd worn to Paul's funeral because they still fit perfectly. On the nightstand was a silver-framed photograph. Paul was on the left, his arms securely around my shoulders. Genevieve was on the right, caught mid-laugh. Standing between us was a 10-year-old Anya, offering that careful, guarded smile she wore back then. The smile that suggested she wasn't certain yet if she was truly allowed to be happy. I gently wrapped the frame in a wool scarf and tucked it into the suitcase. My phone vibrated sharply. A text message from the lead investigator. Acknowledged. We'll have preliminary geofencing and contact info within 24 hours. I typed back, thank you. Send the invoice directly to my personal retainer account. Then I deleted both the incoming and outgoing messages. Outside the window, the famous Provençal hills were still bright gold in the late morning light. The quiet of the countryside was deceptive. Everything looked tranquil. But my gut told me something catastrophic was happening back home. Veronica had always harbored a faint, persistent resentment toward Anya. I had witnessed it for years. The way her jaw tightened when Anya won an academic prize. The cutting, small comments at family dinners that weren't quite jokes. Things like, "It must be convenient to be the favorite child." Or, "Mom spends so much more attentive time with you than she ever had for me growing up." It wasn't entirely an unfair assessment. When Veronica was young, Paul and I were aggressively building the design house. 15-hour days, weekends consumed by trade shows, a desperate drive to succeed. I had missed dance recitals, regularly forgot to pack lunches, and came home too utterly drained to ask about her day. By the time Genevieve's daughter arrived, we had hired managers, established effective systems, and finally I had time. And Anya had needed me in a visceral way that Veronica, who was emotionally guarded, never seemed to. Or perhaps Veronica had needed me just as much, and I had been too busy, too ambitious, and too tired to truly see it. Either way, Veronica had grown up with that gnawing kernel of jealousy. I had recognized it. I had tried to manage it and soothe it, but I'd also been utterly exhausted. Managing other people's complex feelings is nearly impossible when you're 72 and have just endured the slow death of your life partner. So I had done the only thing I could. I had left. I had gone to France. I had trusted my daughters to simply work it out. I zipped the suitcase closed. My instincts were absolutely screaming. The girl I knew would not steal. She would not run. And she would never, ever leave a note claiming we were never her real family. She had spent 10 years mortified of being rejected and sent away. She would never walk away willingly, which meant something else, something far darker, was in play. Something I could not possibly see from a distance. I picked up the framed photograph one more time. Genevieve's face smiled back at me from behind the glass, her hand resting protectively on Anya's small shoulder. That bright smile she had before the cancer consumed everything. "I'm coming," I whispered to the empty, cool room, a promise to my dear departed friend and to the girl I had sworn to raise as my own. I set the frame down and carried my suitcase straight to the front door. Tomorrow morning I would be on a plane. By tomorrow night I would be back in the States and I would find her. The flight from Nice to New York took 13 exhausting hours, including a lengthy layover in Frankfurt. I didn't sleep a wink. I sat rigidly in the window seat, my phone clutched in my lap, constantly watching the screen for updates from the private investigator. Nothing arrived while we were airborne. As soon as we landed, while everyone else was still wrestling their carry-ons from the overhead bins, I switched my phone off airplane mode. The message came through instantly. Target located. Sending geopin now. A red pin dropped onto a digital map. A desolate, sprawling industrial zone on the eastern outskirts of the city, only 20 minutes from the airport. It was an area where textile suppliers and furniture component warehouses used to operate before most production moved overseas. I knew the neighborhood well. It was all empty lots now, rusted chain-link fences, nothing left but cracking concrete and tenacious weeds. I texted back, "Thank you. Send the bill to my personal account." Then I swiftly deleted the entire thread of messages. I did not drive to the family estate. I checked into a generic downtown hotel instead. It was a small, quiet place that asked no questions when I paid in $100 bills. The room was clean but utterly impersonal. Beige walls, a cheap polyester bedspread, and a meaningless painting of a boat that could have been moored anywhere. I set my suitcase down and sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the map on my phone, the tiny blue dot marking Anya's precise location. My hands began to tremble with anxiety and anticipation. I left the hotel immediately and got into the discreet rental car I had picked up at the airport. I plugged the desolate address into the GPS 23 minutes. The roads became emptier the farther I drove. Well-maintained strip malls gave way to closed storefronts with boarded-up windows. Then the road opened up into vast, vacant lots with for lease signs so old the vinyl was peeling. The GPS directed me to turn left into a freight and industrial park that looked like it had been forgotten for a decade. Cracked asphalt, overflowing dumpsters, a chain-link fence with a massive gate hanging precariously off a single rusted hinge. And in the farthest, darkest corner of the lot, directly under a brittle oak tree that had managed to push through the concrete, a car. I pulled in slowly. My tires crunched over debris and shattered glass. The car was a dull, gray sedan with significant rust along the rocker panels and a rear bumper that was clearly mismatched. The windows were opaque with fog and internal condensation. I parked a safe distance, about 30 feet, and shut off the engine. For a long moment I just sat there. My heart hammered so violently I could hear the pulse inside my ears. Then I opened the door and got out. The air smelled acutely of oil, damp concrete, and neglect. Far away, a lonely diesel horn sounded. I walked toward the sedan, the sound of my sensible shoes loud against the pavement. As I drew closer, I could distinguish subtle movement inside. Someone shifting under a mound of dark fabric. I stopped at the driver's side window and knocked once, very gently. The pile of fabric moved. A face appeared instantly. It was her. Deep bruised circles under her eyes, dark hair scraped back into a messy bun. Wearing a thick, worn sweatshirt that looked 3 sizes too big. And then I saw it. She was pregnant. The unmistakable curve of her belly was evident even under the loose garment. My breathing hitched. She stared at me through the glass. For a single fleeting second, her face went soft. A flicker of relief. Of immediate recognition. Then it snapped, it twisted into something else entirely. Pure, unadulterated terror. She scrambled backward, pressing herself against the passenger door, shaking her head wildly. I knocked again, even softer this time. Anya, it's me. Eleanor. Open the door, please. No. Her voice was muffled and desperate through the glass. Go away. Please. I just want you to leave. I just want to talk to you. Tell me what is happening. I don't want to talk to you. You can't be here. She was weeping now. Tears streamed down her face, carving paths through the grime. Just leave me alone. I reached for the door handle. It was locked tight. Anya, I said, my voice low and steady. You were never my real family anyway. The words burst out of her, raw and painful, like something she'd been forced to hold inside until she couldn't stand it. Okay. Is that what you wanted to hear? We were never your real family. I don't need you. I don't want your help. She was shaking uncontrollably. Her entire body convulsed with the effort. I don't believe you, Anya. I don't care what you choose to believe. She finally turned away from me, curling up tightly against the passenger door, burying her face into her knees. Just leave me alone. I stood there for a long time, my hand resting gently on the icy door handle, the window between us fogging quickly from her frantic, heavy breaths. I am not giving up on you, I stated quietly. She didn't answer. I walked slowly back to my rental car. My legs felt profoundly weak and unsteady. I got in and sat there, my hands gripping the steering wheel, staring at her through the windshield. She was 20, pregnant, existing in a derelict car, and she had just shouted the exact same fabricated lie Veronica had quoted to me on the phone. For a terrifying minute, everything Veronica had claimed felt entirely plausible. Perhaps Anya really had stolen the money. Perhaps she really did hate us and resented her place in our family. Perhaps I had been entirely wrong about her true character. But then I forced myself to recall the look on her face before the terror took over. That split second of undeniable relief when she saw me. And the single vital question returned, cutting through all the doubt. If she had stolen $1,200,000, why was she living in a rusted car? A serious thief doesn't end up homeless and pregnant in a freight yard. A thief flees with the cash, disappears to another continent, buys a new identity. A thief does not sleep under a tarpaulin in the harsh late November cold, wearing a tattered sweatshirt. I started the car and drove slowly out of the lot. In my rearview mirror I could see her sedan shrinking, the fogged windows staring back like vacant eyes. My daughter was living in a car, and she was too overwhelmed with fear to let me approach her. Not anger but crippling, deep-seated terror. The drive back to the city was a blur of highway lights and wet pavement. I was barely conscious of the road. My mind was consumed by Veronica, by the sharp edge of bitterness in her voice when she'd called me in France. I knew we couldn't entirely trust her, Mom. I'd always known Veronica resented Anya. I had witnessed it for years but had foolishly told myself that the pain would eventually fade with maturity and time. I recalled a painful night that occurred perhaps a year after the adoption was formalized. We were having a small celebration dinner for Anya's acceptance letter into a competitive design program. Nothing extravagant, just the four of us sitting around the large kitchen table. Veronica had barely spoken 2 words throughout the entire meal. When I'd asked her to simply pass the bread basket, she did so without even lifting her eyes. Later that evening, I'd heard low voices emanating from Paul's study. The door was slightly ajar. "You have all this time for her now." Veronica's voice, quiet but razor-sharp. "Where was that kind of attention when I was growing up, Dad?" Paul had said something indistinct that I couldn't catch. "I'm genuinely happy for you, Dad. Really. It's absolutely wonderful that you finally get to be the attentive parent you always wanted to be." The sarcasm in her voice had been thick enough to cut. Better late than never, right? I had retreated quietly before I could hear the rest. I hadn't known what to say, or how I could possibly mend that deep, decades-old wound. So, I had done the worst thing possible. I had done nothing. And now, 10 years later, standing on the brink of this theft and betrayal, I was confronting the possibility that my inaction had festered and grown into something monstrous and irreparable. I pulled the rental car into the familiar, granite-paved parking lot of the hotel and turned off the ignition. The question, the single point of clarity, kept circling back. If she'd stolen $1,200,000, why was she living in a car? That logical discrepancy would not allow the pieces to fit together. Finally, after sitting there for a long time trying to force the narrative to make sense, I pulled out my phone and called Veronica. She answered immediately, her voice laced with concern. "Mom? Are you truly all right? Where are you?" "I'm back in the States." There was a stunned silence on the line. Then, "You're actually here? When did you land?" "This morning. I couldn't possibly stay away." "Oh, Mom." Her voice softened immediately, laced with pity. "I am so sorry you have to go through this. I want you to come home." "Of course. Yes, please come to the house. Marcus and I are both here. We can help you process this." I closed my eyes, absorbing the feigned compassion. "I'll be there in roughly an hour. Drive safely. I love you." "I love you too." I hung up the phone and drove north toward the estate, the beautiful home where I'd raised both my daughters, where Paul had died in the downstairs library because navigating the stairs was no longer possible. The heavy, black iron gates were open when I arrived. I drove up the long, curving driveway. The design house itself looked exactly the same. Large, imposing gray stone, thick ivy climbing the east wall. I parked and got out. The front door opened almost instantly. Veronica stood there in designer jeans and a simple cashmere pullover. She looked exhausted. "Mom." She descended the stone steps quickly and hugged me tightly. I returned the embrace. Behind her, Marcus appeared in the doorway. Tall, impeccably dressed, distinguished with streaks of gray at his temples, wearing a button-down shirt and pressed slacks. "Eleanor." He shook my hand with a firm, comforting grip. "I truly hate that you have to come back to this kind of distress." His eyes were steady, calm, and seemingly sincere. He looked exactly like the dependable man my late husband had trusted implicitly. "Come inside," Veronica urged. I followed them into the house. The grand entry hall was perfectly maintained. Polished hardwood floors, the deep, resonating tick of the antique grandfather clock in the corner, the familiar scent of lemon polish and old treated wood. I sat down at the granite kitchen island while Veronica busied herself making tea. Marcus immediately excused himself to take a critical work call. "How are you holding up, Mom?" Veronica asked softly. "I honestly don't know yet," I admitted. The kettle began to whistle piercingly. She poured the hot water. I sat there, my hands folded tightly on the cool counter, thinking only of the girl in the car, of the paralyzing terror I'd seen in her eyes. Something was catastrophically wrong. I just didn't yet know what or who was truly behind the lie. But I was here now and I was going to find out. That night, I unpacked in the smaller guest room. It felt strange to be a visitor in my own home, but Veronica and Marcus had logically moved into the master suite after I left for France. The room was precisely as I had left it. subdued blue wallpaper, crisp white curtains, an antique dresser with brass handles that always stuck slightly when you pulled them. I put my clothes away deliberately and slowly, acutely listening to the sounds of the house. Veronica's low voice downstairs talking on a private call, water running in the kitchen, the familiar creak of floorboards in the hallway. I sat on the edge of the bed and gazed at the framed photograph I'd unpacked. Paul, Genevieve, young Anya. Their faces stared back at me. I placed it on the nightstand and lay down without changing clothes. I was physically drained, but sleep was impossible. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face through the car window. The terror. The next morning, Veronica made breakfast. Perfect scrambled eggs, artisanal toast, and coffee that was far too weak for my preference, but I drank it anyway. Marcus had already departed for the office. Early meeting with major European suppliers, Veronica explained. We sat across from each other at the expansive kitchen island, the very same spot where we'd eaten thousands of meals as a family. I'm profoundly glad you're here, Mom, Veronica confessed. I didn't want to go through this specific kind of pain alone. I'm glad I came, darling. She pushed her eggs around the plate, unable to meet my gaze. I keep thinking about all the subtle signs I simply missed. She was always so quiet, so irritatingly careful. I always assumed she was just pathologically shy. She finally looked up at me, her eyes clouded with guilt. But maybe she was secretly hiding things the whole time. Maybe you gave her absolutely everything, Mom. A secure home, a family, a job at the design house. And this is how she chooses to repay you. I nodded slowly, taking another measured sip of coffee. She has always been fundamentally ungrateful. Veronica continued, her voice hardening again. I know that's painful to hear, but it is the truth. She never genuinely appreciated what she had here. I wanted desperately to argue, to spring to Anya's defense, but I was currently playing the part of the utterly heartbroken, shattered mother who believed the official story, so I remained silent and nodded again. Over the next few days, I settled into a calculated routine. I'd share breakfast with Veronica, endure long stretches of time alone while she and Marcus were at the design house, and then attend quiet dinners where Marcus was always perfectly polite, helpful, and mostly taciturn. He consistently asked how I was coping and offered to handle any difficult logistics I might require. He discussed the business in the same calm, supremely competent way Paul had always openly admired. One evening at dinner, while Veronica was retrieving a dessert from the pantry, Marcus leaned forward slightly. I truly regret that you have to deal with this, Eleanor. Your husband would have been furious seeing you in this kind of pain. The mention of Paul caught me entirely off guard. He trusted you implicitly, Marcus, I said, my voice carefully neutral. I know that, Eleanor. And I have tried every single day to live up to that immense standard. Marcus's voice was steady, sincere, and entirely believable. He gave me everything. He taught me the entire complex business from the ground up. I wouldn't be where I am without his faith. I remembered Paul saying almost the exact same words years ago. We'd been in his study, reviewing the preliminary annual statements. He had just promoted Marcus to Chief Financial Officer. Don't worry, Eleanor. If anything ever happens to me, Marcus will take care of everything. He's the son I never had. Paul had smiled when he said it, genuinely proud. I had believed him then. Marcus had been the ideal protege, brilliant, tirelessly hard-working, and seemingly loyal. Now, I looked across the table at him and wondered if my beloved husband had been fatally wrong, or if I was simply allowing my fear to make me question a good man. Veronica returned with the coffee, and the moment of suspicion evaporated. On the fourth day, I informed Veronica I was stepping out for a long walk. I claimed I desperately needed fresh air and uninterrupted time to organize my thoughts. She nodded, concerned, and told me to take as much time as I needed. I walked upstairs instead. I proceeded down the long hallway to the room that had belonged to Anya. The door was closed just as it had been for 2 years. I opened it slowly. The room looked precisely like she had just stepped out for a moment. The bed was neatly made. Textbooks were stacked on the writing desk. A thick woolen cardigan was draped over the back of the chair. It did not look like the room of someone who had violently run away. It looked like someone who would be back soon. I walked to the mahogany desk and opened the drawers one by one. Pens, spiral notebooks, a heavy stapler. In the deepest bottom drawer, I found thick college textbooks: corporate finance, advanced accounting principles, global business management. She had been studying, learning, diligently building a future within the very framework of the family business. I closed the drawer and moved to the built-in closet. Most of her clothing was still there. A heavy winter coat, several pairs of jeans folded precisely on a shelf, expensive leather boots lined up on the floor. If she had truly fled, why would she abandon her most valuable winter garments and shoes? I knelt and looked under the bed. Dust, an old box of teenage magazines, and something else entirely. A small worn sketchpad with a faded blue canvas cover. I pulled it out carefully. The title was Learn to Draw: A Beginner's Guide. I opened it. The pages were not filled with the technical exercises from the book, but with deeply personal pencil sketches. A crib, drawn with simple but meticulously careful lines, as if she had sketched it repeatedly until the perspective was perfect. Baby clothes. Tiny shirts with delicate buttons, minuscule trousers with elastic waistbands. A mobile with stars suspended from strings. Little knitted booties so small they could easily fit in the palm of my hand. I sat back on my heels, the book open in my lap, feeling a profound wave of cold shock. These were not the meticulous drawings of someone plotting global larceny and flight. These were the drawings of someone preparing, someone excited, someone actively anticipating life. She had been pregnant and happy about it, and now she was surviving in a cold car, so consumed by terror that she couldn't accept my help. I closed the book and stood up. My hands were visibly shaking. A thief does not draw pictures of baby clothes. A thief does not leave her winter coat behind. A thief does not study complex corporate finance textbooks and plan for a future within the business she supposedly betrayed. Someone had systematically driven her out. Someone had made her so cripplingly afraid that living homeless felt safer than coming home. I quietly tucked the sketchpad under my arm and left the room. Downstairs, I could hear Veronica moving around in the kitchen. I went straight to the guest room and locked the door behind me. That night, long after Veronica and Marcus had retired to the master suite, I sat in the guest room with my phone. I scrolled through my aged contacts until I found the name I was looking for. Victor Stoddard, a highly respected forensic accountant I had retained over 15 years ago during a complex supplier fraud case. He was semi-retired now but still consulted on elite, sensitive cases. I sent him a direct, encrypted text message. Victor, I need your immediate assistance. Confidential. Can you discreetly audit the design house financials? Possible systematic irregularities over the last 24 months. The response came 10 minutes later. Eleanor. Of course. Send me all access credentials. This stays exclusively between us. I replied with the company account information and the necessary passwords I still maintained from before my departure for France. Report only to me. No one else can know the investigation is occurring. Done. I set the phone down and picked up the drawing book again, flipping through the detailed, careful sketches. A girl planning for her baby does not steal and run. Something monstrous had happened. Something had forced her out, and I was going to find out what it was. I was meticulously setting a trap. I just didn't know yet who precisely would be caught in it. Victor sent the complete, devastating report 4 days later. I was sitting on the edge of the guest room bed when my phone buzzed with the secure email. The subject line was simply blank. I opened the PDF attachment. The first page was a chilling summary. Short, direct sentences. Numbers so vast they required double-checking. Systematic embezzlement conducted over 24 months. Approximately $1,200,000 diverted through falsified vendor invoices and shell corporations. Wire transfers traced to obscure offshore accounts in the Caribbean. Additional, substantial transfers to the personal account of a junior executive named Jessica Hayes. A luxury condominium purchase in Costa Rica registered under a shell corporation ultimately controlled by Marcus Thorne. Value: $450,000. Fabricated documentation explicitly implicating Anya Peterson in the theft of $42,000. Digital trail confirms documents were originated and created on Marcus Thorne's personal office computer. One-way airline tickets to San Jose, Costa Rica. Departure date: December 15th. 2 passengers. I set the phone down on the bedspread. My hands were shaking uncontrollably this time. I read the summary again, then a third time. Marcus had systematically stolen over $1 million from the family legacy. He had purchased foreign property. He had booked one-way tickets for himself and an accomplice. And he had framed Anya. I picked up my phone and immediately called the private investigator who had located Anya in the freight yard. I need you to thoroughly investigate one more person, I instructed, my voice flat and controlled. Jessica Hayes, a junior executive in the finance department at our custom design house. I need to know her relationship with my son-in-law, Marcus Thorne. I need every single detail you can unearth. This will require a few days, Eleanor, he cautioned. That's entirely fine. Be thorough. Be invisible. I hung up and sat staring at the white wall. The next 3 days felt like the longest, most difficult period of my entire life. I continued to eat breakfast with Veronica, engaging in superficial small talk with Marcus, forcing myself to smile exactly when I was supposed to, and all the while, I knew precisely the monstrous thing he had done to my family. On the third day, Marcus announced that he had an overnight trip scheduled to meet with vital wood and material suppliers upstate. He would be gone until the following evening. That's absolutely fine, Veronica said casually. Mom and I can hold down the fort here. He left early the very next morning. I watched from the guest room window as his black SUV pulled quickly down the driveway. An hour later, the investigator called. Jessica Hayes, 28 years old, started at the design house 3 years ago, currently assistant controller. And, he paused, the silence heavy, she has been romantically involved with Marcus Thorne for at least 18 months. I have comprehensive surveillance photographs, detailed hotel records, phone records showing intense, frequent contact, and credit card receipts from high-end restaurants and weekend excursions. Send everything. Now, directly to my email. I opened my laptop instantly. The files loaded one by one. Photograph after photograph. Marcus and Jessica leaving a luxurious suburban hotel, his hand resting intimately on the small of her back. Marcus and Jessica dining at an expensive restaurant 2 towns over, holding hands across the linen tablecloth. Marcus and Jessica in a dimly lit parking lot, kissing passionately. I printed every piece of evidence. The chilling forensic report, all the surveillance photographs, and the detailed summary of the embezzlement. I gathered them all into a heavy manila folder. Then I went downstairs and waited. Veronica returned home around 6 in the evening. I heard her car crunch in the driveway, the front door opening, her quick footsteps echoing in the hallway. I met her in the center of the massive kitchen. Is Marcus here? I asked, my voice devoid of inflection. No, he's still held up upstate. Why, Mom? I need to talk to you. Alone. Stairs. Immediately. She looked at me perplexed. Something in my face, perhaps the sheer lack of emotion, must have finally warned her because her expression subtly changed. What in the world is wrong, Mom? Come with me, Veronica. We walked up the sweeping staircase to my guest room. I closed the door firmly and handed her the heavy folder. Just look, I instructed. She opened the folder, her brow furrowed with annoyance. The very first thing she saw was the glossy photograph of Marcus intimately kissing Jessica in the parking lot. Her face went white, utterly bloodless. She flipped rapidly to the next photo, then the next. Her hands, which had been steady seconds before, began to tremble uncontrollably. Oh my God! Her voice was a barely audible broken whisper. Jessica. From accounting? Yes. She sank onto the edge of the bed, the folder still clutched in her hands, but her eyes were vacant, staring straight ahead. How long? At least 18 months. She nodded slowly, processing information that was tearing apart her entire reality. There is more, darling, I said quietly, using the term of endearment I rarely offered. She looked up at me, her eyes clouded with pure pain. Keep reading. She turned the page. The dense forensic report. I watched the progression of her face as she read. Embezzlement, shell corporations, offshore accounts, $1,200,000, property in Costa Rica, one-way tickets. And then the final unforgivable section. Fabricated evidence framing Anya Peterson. Veronica read it twice. Then, with painstaking care, she set the folder down precisely on the bed beside her. He framed her, she whispered. Yes. Anya did not steal anything, Veronica. Veronica's face crumpled instantly. She pressed her hands over her mouth, muffling a deep animal sound, and began to sob uncontrollably. I sat down next to her, placing my arm gently around her shoulders. She wept for a long necessary time. I did not attempt to speak. There was nothing to say that would soften the impact of this betrayal. Finally, she wiped her face roughly with the heel of her hand. I believed him. Her voice was raw, stripped bare. He told me Anya had systematically stolen from us, and I believed him instantly. I said the most terrible things about her. I told you she was ungrateful and fundamentally dishonest, and I believed every single poisonous word. He is highly skilled at lying, Veronica. I wanted to believe it, Mom. That is the most painful part. She looked at me, her guilt heavy in her eyes. Some hateful part of me desperately wanted her to be guilty because it meant I was right. All those years of feeling like she didn't deserve her place in the family. And when he told me she'd stolen, it felt like the final irrefutable proof. You couldn't possibly have known the extent of his deceit. I should have known. She picked up the folder again, staring at the flight information. He was going to simply leave me, take all that money and just disappear with that woman. Yes. Veronica stood up abruptly. Where is she? Anya, tell me where my sister is right now. Still in the car. The industrial yard. Take me to her. Right now, Mom. I need to see her. I need to tell her I am so profoundly sorry. I looked at my daughter, at the genuine devastation in her eyes, the crushing fresh weight of her guilt. Okay, darling. We slipped out the back door, got into my rental car, and drove across town without exchanging another word. The freight yard looked exactly the same. Gray concrete, rusted dumpsters, her sedan parked pathetically in the back corner under the oak. I pulled up slowly next to it and turned off the engine. Anya was awake this time, sitting up in the driver's seat, a book open resting on her lap. She saw us immediately, and her face went tight with the familiar terror. Veronica got out. I remained behind. This confrontation needed to happen between them. Veronica walked to the driver's side window and knocked once very gently. Anya didn't move a muscle. Anya, please, Veronica pleaded, her voice thick and broken. I know you are terrified, but I absolutely need you to hear me out. Anya stared at her through the glass barrier. I am so deeply sorry. Veronica was weeping openly now. I said terrible, hateful things to you. I believed profound lies about you. And I was cruel to you for years before this happened because I was consumed by my own jealousy and bitterness. I made you feel like you did not belong here. Anya's hand moved slowly toward the door lock. Then it hesitated. Marcus framed you. We know absolutely everything now. The embezzlement, the affair, the fake financial evidence. Veronica pressed her hands against the window, the glass now separating their faces. You did nothing wrong. And I am so sorry that I didn't believe you. The lock clicked. Anya opened the heavy door slowly. She stepped out, standing in the harsh light of the parking lot. Pregnant, painfully thin, and utterly exhausted. Veronica immediately reached for her, and Anya collapsed into her sister's arms, sobbing into her shoulder. They both cried, clinging to each other. I stayed back by my car, giving them the immense space they needed. After a few minutes, I walked over quietly. Anya looked up at me over Veronica's shoulder, her face streaked with tears and dirt. He said if I told anyone what I found, he'd have me arrested immediately. Her voice was a fragile whisper. He said I'd go to prison and they would seize my baby. You are absolutely safe now, I stated firmly. I'm sorry I pushed you away, Anya whispered to Veronica. I'm sorry I said those things about not being your family. I know you didn't mean them, Veronica replied, holding her tighter. I always felt like I owed you absolutely everything, Anya continued, pulling back slightly to look at both of us. When he told me I'd ruined everything by getting pregnant and discovering what he was doing, I believed him entirely, because I'd spent 10 years of my life terrified I'd do something wrong and you would simply send me away. Veronica's face crumpled again. That is entirely my fault. I caused you to feel that way. Not just you, Anya corrected softly, wiping her eyes. It's what happens when someone graciously takes you in. You spend the rest of your existence trying desperately to earn your place. You never had to earn it, I insisted. Your mother was my best friend. I loved you first because you were hers, and then I loved you because you became entirely mine. Anya nodded, but I could see in her eyes that she didn't quite believe that ultimate security yet. We are going to fix this, Veronica declared, stepping back with sudden purpose. All of it. Marcus is going to face severe consequences for what he did. How? Anya asked, looking between us. We are going to trap him, I stated. And then we are going to have him lawfully arrested. Anya looked from my determined face to Veronica's resolute expression. What do you need me to do, Mom? First, you are not spending another single night in this car, Veronica said, her voice now filled with maternal concern. We are taking you somewhere safe, immediately. A hotel? Anya asked, confused. A secure, safe place Marcus doesn't know about. You will remain there until we have him fully arrested and out of our lives. Anya hesitated for a moment. Okay. We collected her few possessions from the car. It was almost nothing. A few clothes, a worn blanket, and the book she'd been reading. She got into the back seat. Veronica sat next to her, holding her hand. I drove to a secure, private hotel on the opposite side of town. A clean, reputable place. We checked Anya in under a false name and paid the room fee in cash. I secured her a room on the 3rd floor overlooking a quiet courtyard. Order anything you want from room service, I told her. Get some much-needed rest. We will call you tomorrow when the trap is fully planned. She nodded, tears finally stopping. Veronica hugged her one last time before we left. In the car on the way back, Veronica stared blankly out the window, her hands clenched in her lap. We need counsel, I said. Immediately. Martin Adler. He's handled all the legal matters for the design house for 20 years. Call him now. Veronica pulled out her phone. It was nearly 9 at night, but she dialed anyway. Martin answered on the 3rd ring. Veronica? Is everything truly all right? No, Martin. We require your immediate help. It's urgent. What has happened? Marcus has been systematically embezzling from the company. We have irrefutable forensic proof. We need to have him arrested as quickly as possible. A long silence followed. Can you both come to my office first thing tomorrow morning? Bring every single document and file you possess. We will be there at 8 a.m. sharp. I'll see you then. She hung up. We sat in the driveway for a moment before getting out. The house was dark, unnervingly empty. What happens now, Mom? Veronica asked, her voice steady now, focused entirely on action. Now, I replied, opening my door. We meticulously set the trap. Martin Adler's office was situated on the 3rd floor of a stately brick building downtown. We arrived at exactly 8 in the morning. Veronica and I. Anya remained secured and safe at the hotel. The receptionist immediately showed us into a large, formal conference room. Martin, 60-something, clad in a conservative gray suit, his reading glasses hanging from a chain around his neck, was already waiting. Sit down, ladies, he instructed, his voice grave. Show me everything you have. Veronica handed him the heavy folder. He read through the documentation slowly and methodically, his expression hardening with every page. The forensic report, the graphic photos, the detailed offshore account information, the foreign property deed, and the plane tickets for 2. When he finished, he set the folder down and looked at us over the rim of his glasses. This is unassailable, he declared. Very, very solid evidence. Have you contacted the police or the district attorney's office? Not yet, I replied. We wanted to consult with you first. Good. He pulled a legal pad toward him and began writing with a precise, quick hand. Here is the critical sequence of action we will follow. We will immediately coordinate with the district attorney's office. They will assign 2 seasoned financial crime detectives. We must arrange a formal meeting, a business meeting, to lure Marcus into a room where he feels absolutely secure and safe. Then we spring the trap. How quickly can this be executed, Martin? Veronica asked, her voice tight with controlled urgency. I can have the detectives here this afternoon. We will need Anya to provide a formal sworn statement regarding the threats and intimidation. Then we will set up the meeting for tomorrow evening. The swifter we move, the less chance he has to get spooked and flee with Jessica. Martin looked directly at Veronica. Can you maintain absolute composure and act completely normal around him for just one more day? She swallowed hard, her jaw firm. Yes, Martin. I can and I will. Good. Do not, under any circumstance, let him suspect anything is amiss. If he gets spooked, this entire meticulous plan instantly falls apart. We left his office an hour later. Martin was already on a dedicated line with the DA. In the car, Veronica sat rigid, staring straight ahead. How are you truly holding up, darling? I asked gently. He came home last night from his trip, she said, her voice flat and strained. I was lying in bed, pretending to be fast asleep when he slipped in. He gently kissed my forehead and whispered that he loved me. She turned to look at me, her eyes filled with pain. I wanted to scream the truth right in his face. Just until tomorrow night. We need him to feel untouchable. I know. She paused, took a deep, steadying breath. I can do this, Mom. I will do this. The following morning, Martin made the critical call to Marcus at the design house. I was standing directly next to Martin when he dialed, the phone set discreetly on speaker. Marcus, it's Martin. I need to schedule an urgent, private meeting with you and Eleanor for tonight at 6 p.m. in the main boardroom at the mill. Marcus sounded surprised but not suspicious in the least. Martin, what is the sudden need for urgency? What's this regarding? Eleanor wants to discuss the immediate future of the company. She has some deep financial concerns regarding the year-end projections. She specifically requested your professional opinion on how to proceed now that Anya's theft has destabilized the accounts. Of course, Marcus replied, confidence immediately returning to his tone. I will absolutely be there. See you both promptly at 6. Martin hung up the phone and looked at me, a flicker of satisfaction in his eyes. He took the bait perfectly. Now we wait. That afternoon, I picked Anya up from the hotel. We drove directly to the suburban police precinct where 2 detectives were waiting. Detective Price, a sharp, composed woman, and her silent partner. They took us to a small, windowless room with a table and recording equipment. We need you to tell us everything, Miss Peterson, Detective Price said kindly. Start precisely from the moment you noticed the irregularities. Anya looked at me. I reached across the table and took her cold hand in mine. It's perfectly okay, darling. Tell them the entire truth. She took a slow, deep breath. I work in the finance department. Roughly 2 months ago, I started noticing some persistent irregularities in the vendor accounts. Invoices that didn't match delivery logs, unusual payments to suppliers I'd never heard of. My voice was quiet but steady. I started quietly digging. I found the unauthorized wire transfers, the fake holding companies, and the money systematically disappearing. What was your first action? Detective Price asked. I went straight to Marcus. He is the CFO. I genuinely thought there must be a simple technical explanation. That perhaps I was overlooking a new corporate structure. She paused, her voice shaking slightly. He told me I was absolutely right to come to him. He claimed he had been investigating the same anomaly. He asked me explicitly not to inform anyone else, especially Veronica or my mother, until he fully figured out who the responsible party was. And then a week later I discovered I was pregnant. I told Veronica, my sister, right away. I was thrilled but simultaneously terrified. Her voice cracked entirely. She must have mentioned it to Marcus. The very next day, absolutely everything changed. How so? He pulled me into his office and locked the door. He told me I had ruined my life, that I was irresponsible and utterly stupid. Then, he showed me falsified bank documents, transfers with my actual signature forged on them. He said I had been stealing from the company for months, and he had undeniable proof. I tightened my grip on her hand. He said if I told anyone he'd have me immediately arrested, that I would go to a state prison and they would legally seize my baby. He claimed no one would ever believe the adopted daughter over the respected CFO. He said I was just the girl who'd never truly belonged. She wiped her eyes with her free hand. He sent me text messages repeating the exact threats. I saved every single one. I was too afraid to delete them. So I left. I ran. I didn't know what else I could possibly do. The detectives asked more forensic questions. Anya answered all of them with quiet, meticulous detail. It took 2 intense hours. When she was finished, Detective Price shut off the recorder. "You did the exact right thing, Miss Peterson," she stated firmly. "We now have everything we need to proceed." Back in the car, Anya leaned her head against the window, utterly drained. "What happens next?" she murmured. "Now we trap him. Tonight, Martin will call Marcus, confirming the meeting. Marcus will think he's walking into a standard business meeting to advise me. He'll show up and we'll be waiting. All three of us. You, Veronica, and me? Yes." She was quiet for a moment, absorbing the plan's magnitude. "I am scared, Mom." "I know, darling, but you are not alone this time. You will not face this threat alone." I took her back to the hotel, ensured she ate a substantial meal, and then drove home. That night I called Veronica. "How is your composure holding up?" "He's downstairs right now, Mom, watching the financial news as if nothing is amiss. He keeps asking me what Martin wants to talk about. I keep telling him I don't know." Her voice was still strained. "I keep thinking about how many times he has lied directly to my face, and how many times I utterly believed him. Just hold out until 6 p.m. tomorrow. We need him completely confident." "I know. Can you truly do this?" "Yes." She sounded resolute now. "I can and I absolutely will." The next evening at 5:30 p.m., Anya, Veronica, and I met Detective Price and her partner at the design house. The detectives set up in the quiet conference room directly adjacent to the main boardroom, close enough to hear every word. Detective Price reviewed the final plan one last time. "We wait until he is completely confronted with all the evidence. Let him talk. Give him rope to try and lie his way out of it. Then we make the formal arrest." "What if he attempts to run?" I asked, looking toward the hallway. "He won't get far, Eleanor. We have 2 uniformed officers stationed discreetly outside the main entrance." At 5:45 p.m., Anya, Veronica, and I walked into the ornate boardroom. We sat around the vast mahogany table, Anya seated securely between Veronica and me. The detectives were now in the next room, listening intently. We waited in tense silence. At exactly 6 o'clock, footsteps approached the door. The heavy oak door swung open. Marcus walked in, expensive briefcase in hand, a confident, practiced smile fixed on his face. Then he saw Anya. He froze instantly. His smile vanished, replaced by an expression of pure, cold shock. "What is the meaning of this, Eleanor?" He looked at me, then at Veronica, then back at Anya. "What is she doing here?" "She is a wanted thief. She stole from this company, from your family. Why is she even allowed on the premises?" "Sit down, Marcus," I said, my voice low and authoritative. His face was rapidly cycling through confusion, fear, and cold calculation. "Eleanor, I don't care what lies she has spun to you. Get out of my office, Anya." He stayed standing, refusing to yield the space. "She is here because she didn't steal a single thing," Veronica said. Her voice was steady, utterly free of the fragility I'd heard a few days prior. "You did, Marcus." The color drained instantly from his face. The door behind him opened. Detective Price and her partner walked in quickly. "Marcus Thorne," Detective Price stated. He spun around, startled. "It is entirely over, Marcus," I confirmed. Detective Price moved to the table. She laid out the stack of irrefutable evidence. The forensic report, the wire transfer receipts, the offshore account records, the property deed in Costa Rica, the one-way plane tickets. "Systematic embezzlement conducted over 2 years," she summarized. $1,200,000, wire transfers to an accomplice into offshore accounts, and the fabrication of evidence explicitly framing Anya Peterson. She looked at him with professional detachment. "We have every single piece of evidence required for conviction." Marcus stared down at the documents, unable to comprehend the speed of his downfall. Then he looked at me, a desperate plea in his eyes. "This is a gross misunderstanding, Eleanor. You know me. Your husband trusted me implicitly. I would never. You told me if I said anything, you'd make sure I lost my baby." Anya's voice cut through his desperate lie, quiet but devastatingly clear. He turned to her, his face twisting into raw malice. "You have no proof of that threat." "Actually, Mr. Thorne," Detective Price interjected smoothly, "we have the complete set of text messages you sent her. Miss Peterson meticulously saved them, and we have her detailed testimony regarding your coercion and threats." His jaw clenched tightly. Veronica stood up. She walked around the table until she was standing directly in front of him. "You didn't just steal money, Marcus," she said, her voice shaking now with controlled fury, but she kept going. "You stole my sister. You used me. You knew I was jealous of her, you knew I resented her, and you leveraged that ugly feeling. You deliberately made me believe my own sister was a criminal. You turned me into a weapon against my own family." He reached desperately for her. "Veronica, please. I did this for us. For our future." She recoiled, taking a large step back. "Don't you dare. There is no us anymore. There never was. You were already planning your future with her." His hand dropped to his side. The male detective stepped forward, pulling out the steel handcuffs. "Marcus Thorne, you are formally under arrest for grand embezzlement, fraud, and witness intimidation." Marcus's face went from an ashen white to a deep, burning crimson. "This is absolutely insane. You can't prove any of this. I'll fight this. I'll." The detective pulled his arms behind his back, snapping the cuffs on with a loud final click. "You have the right to remain silent." Marcus looked at the three of us standing together, three women united. His eyes filled with cold, seething rage and something else, absolute, crushing fear. "You'll regret this," he snarled. "All of you." "I don't think so, Marcus," I said calmly. They led him away, his footsteps echoing down the long, empty hallway, the sound of the elevator doors opening, and then profound silence. The three of us stood there, frozen in place, not moving, not speaking. Outside the windows, the city lights were beginning to glow against the fading sky, turning the twilight purple. I reached out for both my daughter's hands. Anya on my right, Veronica on my left. They held on to me tightly. We stood there together in the boardroom where Paul and I had built this entire company, where we had made every vital decision and planned a future we thought we understood. The future looked drastically different now, but we were still standing. And we were standing together. We left the boardroom together that night. We walked out to the parking lot under the pale streetlights that made the granite look softer and more forgiving than it was. Anya came home with us, not to the secure hotel, but home. She moved back into her old bedroom, the one with the textbooks still stacked neatly on the desk and the heavy winter coat still hanging in the closet, exactly like she had never left. But everything in the house felt fundamentally different now, lighter, cleaner. The house didn't feel the need to hold its breath anymore. Over the next few weeks, we slowly settled into a new quiet rhythm. Breakfasts together. Veronica and I taking turns driving Anya to necessary doctor appointments. Long, subdued evenings spent in the living room where we didn't always talk much, but we were always sitting together anyway. Veronica immediately started professional therapy twice a week at first, then once. She often came home from those sessions quiet, sometimes with redness around her eyes. She was finally working through the deep-seated resentment and guilt that had allowed Marcus's lies to take root. One cold evening, I was walking past Anya's room and heard Veronica's low voice through the closed wooden door. "I am truly sorry," Veronica said. "I know I have said it endlessly before, but I need to say it one more final time. I was cruel to you for years, Anya, and I am profoundly sorry for that weakness." Anya's voice was softer, stronger than before. "I know, Veronica. I can see you are trying to be better now." It wasn't a perfect, cinematic moment of resolution, but it was honest. The baby arrived in late March, a cold, clear Tuesday morning when the sun was just beginning to rise over the eastern side of the city. Veronica and I were both in the delivery room, standing shoulder to shoulder on either side of Anya, while she gripped our hands so hard I knew there would be bruises later. When they finally placed the tiny new baby onto her chest, Anya cried. A deep, relieved, exhausted sound. We both cried with her. He was small, pink, and absolutely perfect. "You are his family," Anya whispered, looking directly between us, tears streaming down her face. "Both of you. You entirely saved us. What are you going to name him, darling?" Veronica asked softly, already wiping her own tears. Anya looked down at the baby, then met my eyes. "Paul," she said. "After your husband, Mom. The man who started all of this, who believed in building a legacy." My throat immediately tightened, and I struggled to speak for a moment. He would have loved that more than anything. I finally managed to whisper. I know he would. Over the months that followed, the grand house was quickly filled with new sounds that were a beautiful antidote to the previous silence. A baby crying demandingly at 2 in the morning, soft cooing from the nursery, and bright, pure laughter whenever Veronica made absurd faces to encourage him to smile. I began teaching Anya how to read a balance sheet and analyze complex financial projections, precisely the way Paul had once taught me when we were first starting out. We sat at the enormous kitchen island with spreadsheets spread out between us while the baby slept soundly in his carrier on the floor. Veronica, who had managed operations for years, showed Anya how to deliver a confident presentation to the board members, how to command a room's attention, and how to effectively answer the most pointed questions without becoming defensive. They worked together seamlessly, better in fact than I could have ever predicted. The design house didn't merely survive the financial shock. It began to actively thrive and grow. New lucrative contracts, innovative product lines, new international markets. The kind of solid growth that only happens when people genuinely care about the quality and ethics of what they are building. Veronica took decisive action to establish a charitable foundation, using some of the recovered embezzled funds from Marcus's frozen accounts. She focused its mission on supporting women in crisis, specifically single mothers and women escaping situations of domestic coercion or financial abuse. She threw herself into this new purpose with the same intense dedication she had once poured into her own jealousy. I cannot, in this lifetime, fix what I did to Anya and the pain I caused, she told me one afternoon. But perhaps, just perhaps, I can actively help someone else's sister. 5 years passed. It is a comfortable Tuesday afternoon now. I am sitting in my private office at the design house, calmly reviewing quarterly reports. The numbers are excellent. Better than good, in fact. I am 77 years old now, but my mind remains sharp. Sharp enough, most importantly, to know when the time has finally come to step back. Through the large glass wall of my office, I can see clearly into the main conference room. The executive board meeting is currently in session. Veronica and Anya are presenting together. They are discussing ambitious expansion plans, a new line of sustainable, ethically sourced home furnishings. They move around each other with effortless, natural ease. Anya pulls up a detailed slide on market research. Veronica explains the complex logistics. They often finish each other's business sentences. One of the board members makes a comment. They both share a quick, genuine laugh. The meeting begins to wrap up. Papers are shuffled. Chairs are pushed back. In the corner of the conference room, Paul, 4 years old now, is sitting patiently on the floor with a coloring book. He has dark, intense hair like his mother and curious, intelligent eyes like his grandmother Genevieve. He sees Anya and scrambles immediately to his feet, running toward her. But Veronica scoops him up first, lifting him high and spinning him around once. He giggles loudly, that high bright sound that only children make when they are purely and completely happy. Anya joins them instantly, putting her arms around both of them. They stand there together. A perfect small family unit within the larger one. And I watch them from my office with tears welling in my eyes. On my desk sits the aged photograph. Paul, Genevieve, and young Anya. I pick it up and run my thumb along the smooth edge of the silver frame. Paul and I built this entire custom-designed house from nothing. We poured every single thing we had into creating a lasting legacy that would endure far beyond us. I always simply assumed that the legacy would pass through blood, that Veronica would be the sole natural inheritor because she was ours. I believed that family meant shared DNA, birth certificates, and legal documentation. But I was fundamentally wrong. True legacy is not written in bloodlines. It is not determined by who gave birth to whom, or whose name is on what deed. It is forged in the refining fires of forgiveness. It is patiently built through difficult second chances and hard, honest conversations that you would rather avoid having. It is passed on through the specific, profound kind of love that chooses to stay and fight when simply leaving would be the path of least resistance. My daughters are teaching me that essential truth every single day. Anya, whom I promised to love as my own, and quickly discovered I already did. Veronica, whom I genuinely thought I had lost forever to bitterness, but found again on the difficult other side of her own personal anger and guilt. Little Paul, who proudly carries his grandfather's name and his great-grandmother's expressive eyes, and who unequivocally belongs to all of us. Through the glass wall, Anya looks up and sees me watching them. She smiles beautifully, then raises her hand and waves. I wave back. The company will soon be entirely theirs. Veronica efficiently running the charitable foundation and handling logistics. Anya brilliantly running the finance and design operations. Me stepping happily back into the vital role of advisor, grandmother, the one who first built it, but now understands precisely when to let it go. I set the photograph back down on my desk. Paul would be so proud, not just of the quarterly numbers or the new markets, or the robust legacy we successfully built. He would be most proud of this, of the resilient, complicated, chosen family we finally became. And I could not possibly be prouder either. So that is my complete story. I would love to hear your thoughts. If you were Anya after everything that happened, would you have been able to forgive Veronica and build a working relationship with her? Let me know your perspective in the comments and subscribe for more complex, emotionally driven stories like mine.